Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The heavy oak doors of the St. Selim Cathedral didn't just open. They exploded inward with a violence that silenced the organ, the choir, and the collective gasp of the city's elite, creating a vacuum of sound where only the click of my dress shoes against the marble mattered. I wasn't supposed to be here. By all accounts, social, political, and logical, I should have been dead in a ditch or rotting in the outer districts, exactly where Alistair Thorne had thrown me 3 years ago. But as I walked down the aisle, the sea of black tuxedos and designer gowns parting like water before a shark, I locked eyes with the man standing at the altar. Alistair, the alpha of the Thorne Syndicate, the man who had broken my ribs with a kick and my heart with a word. Beside him stood the pale, trembling figure of Silas Mercer, the scion of the rival clan, the perfect match for a peace treaty. I didn't stop until I was 5 feet from the altar, ignoring the hands reaching for hidden holsters inside suit jackets. I reached into my white coat, a mockery of the groom's pristine attire, and pulled out not a gun, but a small, velvet box. "You forgot something," I said, my voice cutting through the cavernous silence, steady despite the adrenaline flooding my veins like battery acid. "When you kicked me out of our bed to make room for him, you forgot to dissolve the bond, Alistair. Which means this wedding isn't a union. It's bigamy." The murmurs started, a rising tide of scandal, but I didn't look at the crowd. I looked at Alistair. He looked magnificent, the bastard. His obsidian hair was slicked back, highlighting the sharp, predatory angles of his face. His broad shoulders filled out the ceremonial military-style suit of the syndicate head. But it was his eyes, those distinctive, freezing blue eyes, that held me. They widened, not with anger, but with something I had never seen in the ruthless alpha before. Sheer, unadulterated terror. "Julian," he whispered, the name sounding like a prayer and a curse. "Get out. Now." "No." I smiled, and it felt like glass breaking. "I'm here to kiss the groom." The tension in the cathedral was thick enough to choke on. It tasted of expensive perfume, ozone, and impending violence. To the hundreds of guests watching, this was the scandal of the decade. Julian Vane, the discarded lover, the lowly pianist with no family name, had returned from the abyss to ruin the political marriage that was supposed to end the war between the Thorne and Mercer families. Silas, the groom-to-be, looked between us with wide, watery eyes. He was beautiful in a fragile, porcelain doll sort of way, exactly the kind of obedient Omega society expected an alpha like Alistair to claim. He was everything I wasn't. Quiet, submissive, safe. Guards, Lord Mercer, Silas's father, roared from the front row. He was a corpulent man with a face like a bulldog, turning purple with rage. "Remove this filth. He dares to interrupt the union of our houses." 4 men in the Mercer livery stepped out from the pews, their movements synchronized and heavy. Alistair moved before they could. In a blur of motion that defied his size, he stepped down from the altar, placing himself between me and the approaching guards. The air in the room grew heavy, the static pressure of his alpha pheromones rolling off him in a suffocating wave of dominance. It hit me like a physical blow, a scent of wood smoke, rain, and suppressed violence that made my knees weak even after 3 years of hating him. "Stand down," Alistair commanded. His voice wasn't loud, but it echoed off the vaulted ceiling, vibrating in the bones of everyone present. "He is disrupting the ceremony, Alistair." Lord Mercer spat, stepping forward. "He claims a bond exists? Prove it. You threw him to the wolves years ago." Alistair didn't look at Mercer. He turned his back on the crowd, facing me. Up close, I could see the fine tremors in his hands. This wasn't the reaction I had rehearsed 1,000 times in my head. I expected cold fury. I expected him to signal his men to drag me away. I expected him to laugh. Instead, his eyes were scanning me, checking for injuries, his gaze frantic. "You idiot," Alistair hissed, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "You reckless, suicidal idiot. Why did you come back? To ruin you." I spat back, fighting the urge to lean into his gravity. "To make you hurt the way I hurt when you told me I was nothing but a warm hole you were tired of using." Alistair flinched. The mask of the imperious crime lord cracked for a fraction of a second, revealing a depth of agony that confused me. He reached out, his hand hovering near my face, before he clenched it into a fist and pulled back. "I did that to save you, Julian," he breathed. "Save me?" I laughed, harsh and dry. "You kicked me down the stairs of the manor. You publicly disowned me. You erased my existence. Because if I hadn't made it look real, they would have used you to get to me." Alistair growled, his eyes darting to the stained glass windows above, then to the Mercer guards surrounding us. "And now you've walked right into the kill box." I froze. "What?" "This isn't a wedding, Julian," Alistair said, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. "It's an execution." Before I could process his words, the stained glass window high above the altar shattered. Not from a stone, but from a sniper's bullet. The bullet struck the priest, who collapsed in a spray of crimson. Screams erupted. The cathedral dissolved into chaos. The Mercer guards drew weapons, but not on me, on Alistair. "Get down," Alistair roared, tackling me to the marble floor just as the space where I had been standing was peppered with automatic fire. The heavy weight of his body on mine was a shock to my system, a sensory overload of heat and memory. For a moment, the gunfire and the screaming faded, leaving only the beat of his heart against my chest. He shielded me with his own body, his arms bracketing my head. "Stay down," he ordered, rolling off me and drawing a silver handgun from beneath his ceremonial jacket. "Alistair," I shouted as he rose to a crouch, firing 2 precise shots that dropped the nearest Mercer guards. It was a trap, Alistair yelled over the din of battle. He grabbed my collar and hauled me up, dragging me toward the sacristy door behind the altar. Mercer never intended for Silas to marry me. They wanted us all in one room to decapitate the Thorn Syndicate. We burst into the sacristy, a narrow room filled with vestments and incense. Alistair slammed the heavy door and threw the bolt, then shoved a heavy oak cabinet in front of it. Bullets began to chew through the wood of the door moments later. He turned to me, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. He looked terrifying. He looked beautiful. "You ruined the signal," Alistair panted, checking the magazine of his gun. "My men were waiting for the I do to counter-ambush. You walked in and started the clock early." I didn't know," I stammered. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by the cold reality of our situation. "I just wanted to stop you from marrying him." Alistair froze. He looked at me, really looked at me, stripping away the layers of cynicism and anger I had built up over the years. He crossed the small room in 2 strides, slamming me against the wall. His hands pinned my wrists above my head, his body pressing flush against mine. "You came back," he whispered, his face inches from mine. "After everything I did to make you hate me. After I broke every promise. You came back for me." "I came for revenge." I lied, though my voice trembled. "Liar," Alistair growled. He lowered his head, burying his face in the crook of my neck, inhaling deeply. "You still smell like vanilla and rain. It's been driving me mad for 3 years. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw your face when I kicked you out. It killed me, Julian. It killed me every single day. You have a funny way of showing it." I choked out, tears finally spilling over. "You hurt me, Alistair. You destroyed me." "I had to," he said, lifting his head to look into my eyes. His expression was fierce, possessive. "Mercer had a hit on you. They knew you were my weakness. The only way to protect you was to make them believe you meant nothing to me. I had to be cruel. I had to break your heart to save your life." The revelation hit me harder than the physical violence of the past. He hadn't rejected me for being weak. He hadn't replaced me because he was bored. He had exiled himself from his own heart to keep it beating. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. "Because you're a terrible liar, my love," Alistair said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "If you knew it was an act, they would have seen through it. I needed your pain to be real." The door behind us shuddered as a battering ram hit it. Wood splinters flew across the room. "We're going to die here," I said, looking at the door. "No," Alistair said, releasing my wrists and cupping my face. His thumbs brushed away my tears. "I didn't spend 3 years plotting the destruction of the Mercer clan just to die in a closet with the love of my life." He pulled away, checking his watch. 30 seconds. "My heavy guard is breaching the perimeter, but we need to get to the extraction point." He handed me a spare magazine from his pocket. "Do you remember how to use a gun?" I looked at the cold metal in my hand. 3 years ago, I was a pianist. I worried about sheet music and manicures. But the outer districts had changed me. I had learned to survive. I know how to shoot, I said, my grip tightening on the metal. I imagined shooting you enough times. Alistair let out a sharp, surprised laugh, a genuine sound that transformed his face. Good. Channel that. Stay behind me. If anything moves, and it isn't me, kill it. What about Silas? I asked. Alistair's expression hardened. Silas knew. He was the bait. He lured me in. If he gets in your way, Julian, don't hesitate. The door gave way with a deafening crash. Time seemed to slow. 2 men in tactical gear burst through the splinters. Alistair didn't hesitate. He moved with the lethal grace of a viper, firing twice. The men dropped. Go, he roared. We sprinted out the back exit of the sacristy into the cloister garden. It was raining, a torrential downpour that soaked us instantly. The garden was a war zone. Thorne's syndicate enforcers were engaging Mercer guards in hand-to-hand combat among the rose bushes. We ran toward the stone archway leading to the street, but a figure stepped out from the shadows, blocking our path. It was Silas. He held a submachine gun, his knuckles white. The rain plastered his hair to his skull, making him look like a drowned rat. But the look in his eyes wasn't fear anymore. It was pure malice. You ruin everything. Silas screamed over the thunder. I was going to be the queen of the city. I was going to rule beside him. He raised the gun, aiming directly at Alistair. Alistair shoved me behind him, raising his own weapon, but his slide locked back. Empty. Silas grinned, his finger tightening on the trigger. Goodbye, Alpha. A gunshot rang out. Silas's eyes went wide. He looked down at the red blossom exploding on his chest, then back up at us in confusion. He crumpled to the wet stones. Alistair hadn't fired. He turned to look at me. I stood there, the spare gun Alistair had given me smoking in my hand. My arms were steady. My face was wet with rain and tears, but my hands were steady. I object, I whispered. Alistair looked from the fallen body of his would-be husband to me. A mixture of shock, pride, and burning desire flared in his eyes. He walked over to me, ignoring the chaos around us, and took the gun from my hand, tucking it into his belt. Then he grabbed the lapels of my ruined white suit and kissed me. It was a kiss of blood and iron, desperate and consuming. It tasted of rain and survival. It was an apology and a vow all at once. I kissed him back with 3 years of hunger, my hands gripping his wet hair, pulling him closer until there was no space left between us. The car is here, he murmured against my lips as a black armored SUV screeched to a halt at the gate. We're leaving. We're burning this city to the ground, Julian. Good. I panted, breathless. I never liked this city anyway. The penthouse of the Thorne Tower was silent, save for the hum of the city far below. The war was over. The Mercer clan had been dismantled in a single night of brutal efficiency. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the skyline. I was wearing one of Alistair's silk robes, the fabric cool against my bruised skin. Alistair sat on the edge of the massive bed, watching me. He held a glass of whiskey, but he wasn't drinking. He was just looking, as if trying to memorize me all over again. You're angry, he said softly. I should be. I replied, not turning around. You manipulated me. You treated me like a pawn. I treated you like the king, Alistair corrected, standing up. I heard his footsteps approach, slow and deliberate. He stopped just behind me, his heat radiating through the silk. I sacrificed the board to keep the king in play. He wrapped his arms around my waist, pulling me back against his chest. He buried his face in my hair. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you, Julian. I will crawl if you want me to. I will give you the world. I turned in his arms, looking up at him. The arrogant, untouchable Alpha looked vulnerable. He looked like a man who had walked through hell and was terrified the exit was a mirage. I don't want the world, Alistair, I said, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. And I don't want you to crawl. That doesn't suit you. Then what do you want? He asked, his voice rough. I thought about the gun in my hand. I thought about the power I felt when I walked down that aisle. I wasn't the soft pianist anymore. I wasn't the Omega who needed protecting. I was the one who had pulled the trigger. I want equal footing, I said, my voice hardening. No more secrets. No more protecting me from the dark. If we do this, we do it together. Blood for blood. Alistair's eyes darkened. A slow, wicked smile spread across his face, the smile of the devil recognizing his own. Equal footing, he agreed. He leaned down, his lips brushing my ear. But tonight, let me remind you who you belong to. I shivered, the old spark igniting into a roaring fire. Prove it. And that is how the discarded lover returned, not to beg for scraps, but to claim the throne. If you enjoyed seeing Julian evolve from a victim into a survivor who takes what is his, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a husband who tried to kill you socially to save you physically, or is a lie always a betrayal? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,